the language is kind of saucy, so a lot of times. So it's a section where
I
there was
know.
just
Yeah, that's why I chose it. It's fun, a little spicy.
you're like my target reader. You're the person I wanted to like create this book for. I like powerful brown black women who are like just doing the thing, and then make
Oh.
it complex and crazy, but but
Yes, I
that's what
felt that. I felt like you were speaking to me. All right, well, let me kick off the show. Welcome, Brown Ambition. I am so excited to be joined by the Clarence Haynes. He is the author of Brown Ambition's official book club selection for August and September. Y'all, I am so excited for y'all to read his book. It is called Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery. I have 5011 copies. This is the one that I've been Gail King reading. You know, when Gail always comes out with a book and it's got like 7011 little sticky notes in it. That's my note-taking copy. I also have one on display. I told Clarence I made an altar to his book, which is very on brand. We're going to get into the book. It's all going to make sense. But Clarence, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm over the moon, and thank you for your hospitality and the altar and the coordination of all things. I appreciate
You're going to feel right at home. My dog's about to start barking. I can feel her rumbling. So, you know, it's all
it.
family here. Well, you're in New York, right? We're both in New York. Is that
Correct.
right?
I'm in Brooklyn and Clinton Hill.
Okay.
Specifically, I grew up in the Bronx.
You have a voice for podcasting and radio. You've probably
Oh,
heard that
thank
before.
you, thank you. Yeah, I can't say I've done much voiceover work, but I have been in the performing arts. I've sung a bit, and yeah,
Okay.
I people have been so nice. People have been asking me if I did the audiobook, and it would have been far too stressful. And people should really hear for folks who are into audiobooks. Brittany Bradford and Andre Santana, the two narrators, they did an amazing job.
They
So,
did such a good job. I listened and well, I listened to the book on audio because we're a working mom. We don't have our hands free lots of times. And narrators can make or break the audiobook. And had they not been so good, I probably would have had to like put down the kids or gotten a babysitter or something to read the hard copy. But they were phenomenal.
the phenomenal. They've already Audiophile magazine. They already won an award for
Really?
for like outstanding narration. I forget the exact language. They're getting. I'm pretty sure like end of year list. They're gonna be recognized because everyone, their mama is just like wow. So.
And it's just a book that you made that is now like lifting up careers and winning awards. For the girls who have not had a chance to pick up the book yet, could you give us a quick synopsis of what this book is about and what they can expect?
Sure. The book, as people know, is called The Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery. It is about a high-powered New York publicist who has a secret mystical past. The title character, her name is Gwendolyn Montgomery. However, one thing I can reveal, her identity is constructed. And so as the story unfurls, we begin to get more and more intel about who she really is. She's basically coordinating this really big fashion event at the Brooklyn Museum that goes horribly wrong, and then that takes the story. The story begins. The ball starts to roll in terms of us figuring out who is this character. She's also has a mysterious connection to an Afro-Latine queer psychic who runs a botanica in the South Bronx. His name is Fonzie.
Fonzie.
He's
I'm such a
Fonzie.
Fonzie fan.
Everybody loves Fonzie. He's in a bit of a mess. He's having a love triangle between his toxic ex-boyfriend Raphael, and this mysterious ghost with which he's
Why are
having.
you giving everything away? Come on now.
And the big issue is he also comes with a warning for us that ghosts are about to invade the human world, and so there's also again I use the word mysterious, a mysterious connection between him and Gwendolyn Montgomery. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a way of paying homage to New York City, to my roots. My family
Mm.
immigrated here from Panama, and I grew up in the Bronx. I've pretty much lived in New York most of my life, and so I wanted to do something that would pay tribute to my home city, to the culture that I grew up with, and then also that honored my love of speculative fiction, of fantasy, supernatural, sci-fi. That's my jam. That's always what I want to infuse in my writing. So
Yes, it's very paranormal. It's kind of, I mean, sexy, ghostbustery, insecure, kind of mixed. Like these are the things on my mood board as I was kind of, it's very visually stimulating, the words, the colors of the book. And yeah, it's a world, like it's a modern New York. It definitely, like I feel like I walk alongside a Gwendolyn. You know, if I'm going into the city, we all probably know a woman like Gwendolyn. We probably well wish we were her friends, but we probably just low key stan her on the internet and just like all her posts.
yes.
But she is a baddie and she is quite mysterious. But yeah, so okay, the characters. One of my first questions was who inspired Gwendolyn first and foremost, because I do want to give her shine, although Fonzie does his damn best to try to steal her spotlight because he's so adorable as a human. But start with Gwendolyn. Where did the inspiration for her come from, and what did you want her to represent?
Sure. So I wanted Gwendolyn to represent women like you. You know, as I said, I grew up in New York, and I was surrounded by these array of black and brown women, and I always just an image that stayed with me for years has been there's an image of Shirley Chisholm riding the subway with her second husband, and he's in a suit, and she's doing her Shirley Chisholm look. She has her dress, you know, the glasses, the wig. I can't remember if she has a purse. I believe the picture ran in the Daily News, and you know they were riding the subway, and you see the graffiti, and you know the subway looked like the subway of that time, but there was just this powerful cosmopolitan black woman, and I was like, oh, that's like for me as a kid it was like that's the promise of who I could be one day, and so that's never left me, that type of feeling. And so I just knew I was like, oh, I want to do something that you know these glam women who I've grown up with or worked with in publishing. I've worked for many years as a book editor for different houses, both in-house and as a freelancer. I wanted something that would represent them. And so Gwendolyn is meant to capture, epitomize that in terms of her style, the way she walks through the world, her need for things to be immaculate. Um, um, just exactly as you said, Mandy, like her badassness that you just see her walking by and you're like that girl, wow. And then, you know, because of my love for speculative fiction, I had to subvert it. There are going to be ways then it's like, okay, but there's a reason why she's into this. There's a reason why she's obsessed about these things. It's not necessarily just like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to just have a glamorous woman? But there's some real childhood stuff that's really been informing her obsession with these things. And then Gwendolyn, because her character is holding back a lot of stuff, in the beginning of the book, we also see she's dating this new guy, James, who's really into her. And for some reason, she's feeling like she has to hold back. Because she's holding so much back, her character is a bit of a cipher. You know, she's more identifying with her work and the things around her, and there are little clues as to who she really is. Whereas versus Fonzie, who he is just on the page. He's just like figuring things out. He's just overtly emotional. He's just in the mix. What he's figuring out is what he's figuring out. We are privy to it right away, and so there's a big contrast between the two characters and their journey. So
Yeah, and it's not immediately clear that they are connected. I mean, I kind of anticipated that they would be connected, but I thought they're great foils for one another because they're so like on different ends of the spectrum in terms of the way that they're in the world. I mean, Fonzie's very so is it too much to say Fonzie is a dream walker? Is that the expression?
you sure,
Dream
sure.
tripper?
It's been so long since I.
Come on now, I need your help with the lingo. That was one of the so he's but in his dreams he can visit or not always in his dreams but he is able to commune with the dead. That is one
Right.
of his powers and he kind of low key is doing that in the back room of this shop that he owns. It's a Botanica. Did you grow up near a Botanica? Are there still Botanicas around?
There are many botanicas
Okay.
around, and and they vary now. Some botanicas are still pretty. There was one I was at in the Bronx not that long ago. Pretty traditional, pretty old school. Another one in Brooklyn. And then there was one in Lower East Side Manhattan that I visited for the first time. I'm not even sure if they would coin themselves Botanica, more like sort of like a new age holistic fusion type space, but I would call it Botanica. And yeah, they're still around. People are still doing their thing. I wanted to the book in terms of the spiritual practices that are presented, they're inspired obviously by like the real world and things that really exist, but then the rules for this particular book are its own thing. And so for instance, and then I just wanted to play with the concept of botanica anyway. So for Fonzie, his approach is it's much more eclectic, much more holistic, much more kind of new agey and less old school, which would fit into his character. And I also just kind of think that's the reality, if we're honest with ourselves. That's the reality of how we navigate the world. We do hold on to traditions, but I would argue it's almost impossible to live in the modern world and not fuse those traditions with other things, newer things. So.
Yeah, it just seems like it's ripe for gentrification, it'll have like a coffee shop in the front with like $12 lavender
So the
honey lattes
character
and stuff.
Fonzie would be like, oh, how do I feel about this? Whereas his associate Robin, they wouldn't have it. They'd be like, oh no, this is
The
this is
sidekick.
we're not like, oh hell no, so yeah.
So let's talk about the lore because it's fun. I'm not actually Afro-Latina. I have Santos is my last name, but that's because my husband is Dominican
Mhm.
and he grew up in a very like Catholic kind of household. And there's, we got so many Marys and so much Jesus and, the big portrait of Jesus over the bed at his parents' house and all that kind of paraphernalia around. Not too much on spiritual stuff. I'm pretty sure his mom would be not so down with that, but I love it because it gives me more color and more like I feel like it gave much more depth for me to my understanding of like Afro-Latinx culture. So I'd love for you to, tell me a little bit about the spiritual side of it. And did you grow up with that? Was someone teaching you this, or were you always kind of like maybe my husband, taught that's not, we don't mess with that.
So it was. I had sort of. It's interesting you asked that because I consider myself at this point in life to be pretty spiritually eclectic. And how I grew up with. My mother was in many ways traditionally Christian. If memory serves me correctly, was part of different Protestant denominations, but she also incorporated we would go to the botanica. She would take me to the botanica. I would wake up and sometimes she would splash what's called Florida water on my head, on my pillow.
Florida water.
Yeah, I would. There were
Okay.
things you were supposed to do to help ward off like evil spirits, or if someone wanted to like put something on you. So I grew up. She actively believed in that as well. I think some of it, my mother had, there were some emotional health issues, so I definitely think some of it was due more from paranoia. But certainly, in terms of me just being exposed to some of these traditions, it was there. And so, what for the book, I knew a lot of this stuff, and just as someone who is a child of the diaspora, and in terms of my studies in college and my work professionally, I, aware of certain belief systems that are derived from West Africa. And so, all that to say, I relied on that in terms of the world building for this particular book. I did do additional research, and I even overwrote at one point. My publisher, Kashan Trotman, she was like, "This is too much. This is
Oh, Lord, I can
don't,
relate.
yeah, I don't." She was like, "I don't read. Why is all of this here?" And then because I felt like I
We're
needed
trying to show our work.
right,
We
and
is smart.
yeah, and be like, I'm honoring. the culture, and not being someone who's just taking this stuff lightly, and then after a while realize, oh, she's right, this is too much. And so that was my process. But again, I also it was a sort of a weird thing in the sense of, like, for instance, in terms of your husband's Catholic beliefs, so like that's referenced, the connection between Catholicism and the saints and their orishas. That's briefly
Yeah.
referenced, which I know a lot of people don't realize. The history.
Orisha means, well, it's not the same as saint, but there are these
They're
deities that are
yeah,
looked up
they're
to,
deities, yeah. And
worshipped.
when people were brought over from the transatlantic slave trade to the what would be the Americas, they found it the saints, they were useful then to sort of syncretize to take on. You could still maintain your belief system through the guise of saints, because it would be too dangerous to say I'm worshiping these African deities, but because of so many saints that you can that you can
Yeah.
find the saintly equivalent to your Orisha. And so a lot of people don't realize that. And then part of my process was like, well, how to sort of make reference to that, but that's not technically what the book is about. And so it just had to be referenced and honored, but then keep things moving. And then also the mystical order that Fonzie belongs to, they're called Guardians. I'm saying it in English because my Spanish is so bad. I always think I'm going to mispronounce everything. But I use Spanish in the book, in terms of the title of the group. They have their own system. Like, this system is not based on like any real world, spiritual group. That's like fantasy world building type stuff. So it's this interesting, like, fusion of sensibilities, and that's my big thing, is fusion, mix it up. The book deals clearly with real world spiritual traditions, and then some things are completely fantastic. The book is a bit urban fantasy, is a bit horror, is a bit romance, is a bit mystery thriller.
It
It's
actually is more horror than I thought. I should have known when it got sexy earlier, because like horror movies always have sexy stuff. But I was actually listening to it at night. I forget why. I couldn't sleep one night, and so I was kind of like puttering around the kitchen, and I had the audiobook on, and I caught myself getting nervous, like getting spooked, because I'm like three-quarters of the way through. A lot of spooky shit is going down. And I was like, let me press pause on this until the morning. I'm like, this book is stressing me out, but in a good way. I think yeah, it is. I mean, it's not over the top, I will say, because I'm not an over the top girl. Like, I don't like a lot of like over the top gore and, that like Quentin Tarantino shit, like a lot of violence in that way. But I think it's unsettling because it feels like, oh, this could happen. How many of us know someone who's passed away that has some unfinished business, and we would not want them to come back and
so
find us?
Yeah, so the whole concept, and thank you so much for bringing that up. The whole concept of how ghosts are configured in this particular story is that ghosts exist in this place called El Intermedio, which is this limbo for when you're not really ready to fully let go and die and join the ancestors. And the reason why they're stuck is because they have unfinished business in the real world, because they're still, they don't feel like what was really impacting their life, their soul was resolved, and they're not at peace, and so they're stuck. And it's from this place where Fonzie can communicate with them. And a big theme of the book overall is how the past impacts how we live today, how it gets in the way of us being our fully actualized selves, how it can impact how we do desire, intimacy. And yeah, I'm much more interested in sort of the psychological dimension of horror and the supernatural than just being shocking or grotesque for the sake of being shocking and grotesque. That's not as interesting to me as like getting into like the psyche of everything and being like, well, what would be the motivation for these characters and figures, and how does that connect to how we live? So
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you've said already that Gwendolyn is not who she's presenting herself to be, and that she, in a lot of ways, she's putting on this persona every day that she has cultivated. She used to study when she was growing up in Panama. She grew up in a in a shelter, right? Or not a shelter. What am I trying to say? Where do you put children without families?
Orphanage, orphanage.
Orphanage, sorry. What are the words?
Should we say spoiler? Should we say spoiler? Or the people
You
who have
done gave half the plot away. Why is that a spoiler? All right, fine. I'll stop there. But yeah, right. So she, in her childhood, she's like, this is we do get a chance to look back, which I appreciate because I like getting back to find out where people come. As a mom of small children myself, don't we love a mother wound that becomes so bad that it almost destroys all of humanity? Yay for moms. But sure, let's go there. Because you do talk about the psychological component and childhood trauma and how, innocence as children, we can be, I don't know if tainted is the right word, but I'm sure it's universally experienced in some way. Everyone has some influences that from caretakers potentially, or a lot of people do, caretakers who are meant to, surround us with love and give us protection and all of that. But in Fonzie and Gwendolyn's case, we find out that they weren't always protected by their caretaker, in this case, their mother figure. And I would love you to talk about that and how that theme is important to the book and or why it was important for you to bring that into the book.
They're both had childhoods that, in many ways, were less than ideal. There's a Fonzie's mom, who we know as Madrina. In the book, we get to know her through prologue and flashbacks. She is a character who you begin to realize, was powerful, but also was never able to be recognized for her power, properly recognized in the way that she wanted to be for her power, or what she could do, and that thus felt like her circumstances were very limited. And there was a bitterness that just began to creep into her soul, and that impacted then how she saw herself, how she viewed her place in the world, and perhaps most importantly for the book, how she treated her son, and then someone else who comes into their household. And I just think we don't, as a culture, we don't sit enough with the ways in which we've been hurt during our formative years. Peter Gabriel has a song, Digging in the Dirt, finding places we've been hurt. And I just don't think we do that enough because it's so painful. It just brings up stuff that we'd rather tell ourselves we can move past. But what I would argue is that the decisions we make as adults, we end up doing things that are still connected to the past. We're still figuring out whatever it was we needed to figure out. We're still acting as if we could fix what went down before by what we do today. And I would argue, if we were to really people to really sit and have a true reckoning with the shit they've endured, they'd be like, that's what happened. Oh, I don't need to do X, Y, and Z anymore. That's gone. That's over. And you need to grieve and mourn and find support, whether to be a therapist or family or I know some people's church, whatever. But you have to go through a process, and then I think you can really see who you're supposed to be and live a more actualized life. And so my way of exploring that, I knew what the story was going to be, but then I had to figure out like how to construct this, this speculative fiction, this urban fantasy horror thing that would explore those ideas without like going off the boards, while still, being the story that it needed to be. So
I think that, I 100% agree. I've been talking so much lately about, I've joked with that in the past. I'm like, it's no wonder we addicted to our phones and sex and food and the internet and TikTok and all this stuff, because we're avoiding feelings. It's like this is really hard. I need an escape. And we're all just like running from them. But they are just, I think that's one of the ghosts that we don't like, isn't necessarily a character in the book. But for me, the ghost of the trauma and the ghost of pain is very much there. And I think one of the tragedies for me of Gwendolyn and why I look at Gwendolyn with like heaviness because she is obviously a really accomplished and driven character, but she also, I look forward to getting to know more about her. I kind of feel like there might be more books coming, but I don't know. Because we kind of meet her when she's in full sprint, has sprinted away from so much of her childhood, and you run away from it, and you're thinking like, I'm in control now, and this is my way of controlling it. And even if the people who were the cause of that pain have passed on, or we've cut them out of our life in some way, it's not always enough. Like it's not usually enough. And
Right.
so needing to, but it can be hard as hell to like pause your life and grapple with it. I mean,
And it's,
Gwendolyn
you know,
had a whole ghost apocalypse, and
and it's
finally,
it's complicated, right? Because there are things that Gwendolyn is, I would argue, she's doing right. Like the fact that she's was able to sublimate her need for like I need to feel beautiful, I need to feel safe, I need to feel powerful, and to sublimate that into like a really powerful career, into like this way of living that in many ways is just like wow. I give her all the props, but then there are ways in which, and when you find out like who she really is, and what particular Orisha she's connected to, and how her power works, once you realize all of that, then it begins to be like, oh, but this isn't really fully who she is. So how is she dealing with not embracing all these other things about herself? And then even just on a purely practical level, I would argue she doesn't even realize some of the decisions she's making are being impacted by the past. There's no reason. It's revealed that at one point she leaves New York and she decides to come back. There's no reason for her to come back. She could have gone anywhere else in the United States, tried to leave America, but yet she chose to come back to the place where so much of what she went through as a teenager, particularly, was unresolved. And I say that's because she knows she's still figuring things out. It's still calling her. So I think these things are so complex, and we do the best that we can. It's often a mixed bag. I often feel like people do figure out ways in which to thrive on some level, but then there's often something that's still impacting us living our best life, which I imagine you must deal with a lot in terms of your work and your clients and the stories that you hear. And
yeah, I think we're carrying a lot of doubt, but we're also carrying some of that doubt is like shame as well. Like, and I do think shame comes into the book as well. Gwendolyn's got some shame from, some of the activities she was exposed to as a kid and maybe felt like she took some part in. And if there's unresolved shame around something that happened to women, like whether it's, in their personal lives or in their careers, or typically the women that I work with through my career coaching, it's like a lot of shame around where they wish they were, or the version of themselves that they want to be. And they're sort of like using that, it's like an anti-saint. They create an altar for this version of themselves that they think should exist. And they're like always comparing themselves to that. And it's really damaging and it's very limiting in a way. I'm obviously not a psychologist, but a lot of the work I do, it ain't about resumes and cover letters. It's about before you, like what could be holding you back from, feeling good about your career or feeling good about, where you're at in life, is this idea that you're not already where you need to be, and that you can't accept and love exactly where you are right now. It's really hard. And I'm not immune to that either, but it's really, really hard. And when you're not able to do that and accept where you are, you may feel like you're achieving things and moving through the world, but it actually can be holding you back in a lot of ways. Because you're not fully open. Like you're not fully open and you don't fully love and appreciate and accept everything about yourself. And And toward the end of the book, there's a line where Gwendolyn is asking herself, she's like, "Is this what it feels like to come out?"
Yeah, I think I think it's funny you say that because I've dealt with that as well. I think I'm doing well in my career, but I do sometimes have this feeling of like, oh, should I have certain things? Should I have focused on this earlier? Should I have focused on this earlier? What was I doing before? What was I searching for? What got in the way? And I do think, in retrospect, I'm like, oh, okay, there are certain ways in which I could have given myself more agency in terms of handling X, Y, and Z. But simultaneously, I would say, in terms of certain experiences I've had, it's what worked for me at the time, and trying not to be so hard on myself. Particularly, I tell people, I'm a very hard worker now and like a 7 days a week work type of guy. And people are like, oh, Clarence, is that okay for you? I'm like, no, no. I used to be on the streets all the time. I used to be in the club all the time.
Oh, okay. I
I've
had my
done the
fun.
thing. I've done the thing. It's time for me now. And I'm like, okay, so this is my journey, where I definitely got to party and play for a while, and then like, okay, now it's time to be serious and
Put
focused.
on that newsboy cap, get to work. Well, talk to me. You do get into like the scene, the dating scene, like modern queer dating scene in New York City. Why was that important for you to incorporate into the book?
That was important to incorporate into the book because I think I needed to like just get some of my experiences on the page.
Hold on, BA fam. We're going to be right back, right before Clarence spills some of that tea about the dating scene in NYC. Stay tuned. More with Clarence Haynes, the author of The Ghost of Gwendolyn Montgomery, Brown Ambition's August-September book club pick. Go cop your copy right now. Go to bookshop.org. Check our show notes for a link to purchase your copy, and we'll be right back with more Brown Ambition soon.
I think the New York dating scene, and it's certainly changed over the years. It looks very different now than what it was before the time of apps and social media and how that impacts how dudes date each other. But I just think there's often a certain level of callousness. And I think how to balance, in terms of being part of the gay queer scene, one's need to explore and connect and be expressed, and sort of, I call it a gay urban smorgasbord at one point, and indulge in that because one can, and I do think it's important to experience pleasure. But I think at the same time, then we also have to remember we're human beings. We have feelings as much as we'd like to think. I think a lot of men think they can just compartmentalize sex and intimacy. And I don't think that's the case. Everything is connected, and so after a while, we do have to sit with like, oh well, I'm dealing with other human beings, and if we're just seeing each other as just nothing but bodies, what does that do to you after a time? I think then you have to sort of step back and see, how is this really working? Is this really what I want? And in Fonzie's case, Fonzie's just yearning for care and intimacy, and just
Oh,
for
and
some
a
old
haircut.
school, yeah, just some old school snuggling, just to be with his man, and doesn't feel like he has the voice to really stand in that. And I think that's a common thing. I can speak from personal experience. That's a thing in New York, where how do you decide, no, this is the type of experience I want, even if you're surrounded by other dudes who just want to like hit it, quit it, go on to the next, or have their
Yeah.
sort of more impersonal modes of intimacy. So.
Yeah, one of my closest friends is a black queer man, and oh my God, if you think, ladies, you think we got it bad dealing with these straight dudes, I'm just talking about the stories he would tell me. Yikes.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's sometimes like no, like you just like no, we're not
We're
gonna
not
do
gonna.
this. Like let's take a moment and talk about let's
Yeah.
analyze the language you're using here, what you're like literally, yeah, I've had dates experiences where I've had to say like, no, that's not acceptable. This is what you and I'm like, okay, and this is another grown human being, and they sort of get quiet and they sort of are like, oh, I guess what he's saying is true. And I'm like, yeah. Like,
Wow, no one's ever told me that
well,
before.
yeah, it's really interesting. I
Yeah.
just think it's I think it's fascinating, and I think it's really weird. You know, the New York dating, gay dating, sex scene. It's really I just think a lot of people just need to stop and take a moment. Like again, like I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to enjoy, but I think there's a way that where a lot of people aren't recognizing our humanity in that experience that then leads to just pain and you know a
Mm.
lot of hurt feelings and a lot of emotional isolation and yeah. So it's been interesting to observe, particularly as a writer, like to sometimes be part of the scene, but then also having to observe. So I'm somewhat removed. It's an interesting feeling. So
Well, are you currently dating? Are you single Pringle?
I'm
You
single.
boot up. So yeah, that's yeah, working through some stuff. Well, can we talk about your career for a sec?
Sure.
Switch a little gears. So I think, the number of people who say they want to write a novel is probably a gajillion times bigger than the Library of Congress. Not everybody actually sits down and does it. And you've been in the publishing world, you've been editing for years and years, but you've also written. So can you talk a little bit about your journey on that career path and how you sort of made it work for yourself?
Sure. So I actually started as an in-house associate editor at Random House before it was Penguin, before the merger, before it became Penguin Random House. And
Toni Morrison's old stomping grounds.
Toni Morrison's also summer. So Toni Morrison is not just a literary hero of mine in terms of her actual writing, but in terms of her career arc. Like Toni Morrison, I started off as a Random House
I've
editor.
got her book right over, or not her book, but a book about her, Tony at
Oh,
Random,
Tony at
that just
Random.
came
Yeah,
out.
I have it
Yeah.
too. I have it too. And so you know, for years I just thought like I took a break at one point and then went into I modeled for a bit and went to the performing arts world. But I always freelanced as an editor for the bulk of my career, and so I thought that would be my thing. And then increasingly I was like, well, I think I actually have something to say. And I was asked to write a short nonfiction book about the history of Jim Crow laws in America for middle grade and high school readers. And then I think where things really took off was when I was asked to be co-writer for Omar Epps' young adult Afrofuturist series Nubia. And so
Those
that
are so different. So you wrote a Jim Crow textbook for middle schoolers?
very it wasn't there was very like small like thin Jim Crow book and then yeah and then
Okay. Hopefully not too small. I'm worried about I'm gonna be the way I'm gonna be reading my son's textbooks, like that's not good enough. Like it's not gonna work.
well, it was the Jim Crow book. It was very much like this is like it's like sort of taking a topic and a very narrow focus, so it's easily digestible. That was
I understand.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And so
So how do you
then
go from that to Omar Epps' urban
so
fantasy
because this is
novel?
my real passion was has always been speculative fiction, and so
What does that mean, speculative fiction?
speculative fiction means anything where there's that involves the fantastic. So anything that
Okay.
is like sci-fi, fantasy, horror, paranormal stuff. Speculative fiction is a huge umbrella term to encompass all of those genres. And that's always been my thing. That's always been my jam. Even when I was in house at Random House, the imprint I worked for, Harlem Moon, and we just our particular division, we weren't able to. I wasn't able to like acquire books that were sci-fi, fantasy, speculative fiction oriented. But that's always been my love. And yeah, so once the opportunity came to work with Omar, and it's just known like, oh, that's his jam. He'll be a good fit, for this particular type of book. Then that was really what launched me then into becoming known as a writer in addition to being an editor. And it was something that was just very gradual. It's a little bit different from me in the sense of the opportunities that have come my way happened almost more organically because I was known in the industry already. So I didn't have to like do sort of like an outside agent is taking me around, introducing me to different publishing houses for the deal. Like people just kind of oh yeah, we know Clarence. Yes, he'd be good for that. Can we just ask him? Just get in contact with him.
Did that make your journey into like your first? Well, first you had the Omar Epstein, but when it came to shopping around Ghost of Gwendolyn Montgomery, which is very different. I mean, that's your byline. Your well, not byline, but you know what I mean. Your name on the book. Do you feel like that made it a little bit easier, or did you feel like you were, a bit? Was it more stressful, like pitching your
Oh,
own
it
book?
was easier, and you should also know, I didn't technically shop it around. I came up with the idea with Krishan, and so
Oh, fun. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
you and Krishan knew each other before all this, and you're like,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
have an
yeah.
idea. Oh, okay. That's nice.
Freelance editing work for Legacy Lit, and so they wanted to
Oh,
start doing
okay.
fiction. And Krishan was looking at Mexican Gothic, Sylvia Morena Garcia, and she was like, some of this sci-fi fantasy stuff. This is um, uh, out there for me, but I get this. I like this. She was going to a party. She wanted, and I was like, I could do that. I know how to
You're
do
like, taking
that.
down notes.
I have an idea. So yeah, so it wasn't even a really a shopping around process. My journey's not typical outside of because even most people how they enter park publishing, it's they work their way up from editorial assistant to assistant editor to associate blah blah blah. And I came in. I actually was working in educational publishing at a nonprofit, and then someone, my future boss, she could see just sort of like how the skills that I already had would be applicable to the book publishing world, and was fine hiring me. So it's been my journey is not typical. Though I do feel comfortable saying for anyone who's interested in the publishing world and making your way, it's really, really, really about relationships and really having solid professional relationships, being someone who's seen as reliable. You don't have to be perfect. I think most people will allow for, we're all human, but really, really just carving a path for yourself where you're just known for doing quality work and for being someone that people really enjoy working with, and a lot of doors open as a result. So
Just don't be an asshole. I've been trying to tell
basically,
y'all. Just
but
don't.
it's weird, but it's hard for a lot of people. It's hard. And I'm
I
like,
mean, be an asshole if you have to be. If someone's trying to play you, yes,
yeah,
sometimes you
sometimes,
have to be. But
but
there's,
sometimes I'm like, but
but you
why,
gotta have some good
why,
relationships,
why are you being so mean right now?
especially in the publishing world. I bet you work with some authors, or do you get to be more anonymous? You know.
I get to. I will say, fortunately, knock on wood, the most of the authors I've worked with have been a joy. I've been very fortunate. I've had a couple, and it's been weird. And I'd even say, probably the two that were most difficult had a lot more to do with it's interesting we're talking about like psychological pain and trauma. Like I think it just like what they were working on brought up like some hard stuff for them, and they didn't know how to handle it in the process. I'm not a
Ooh wee, I feel that.
yeah, and so there one author I was there working into the wee hours trying to get the thing together, and he said he was having breakdowns, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, tortured
So yeah,
writers. Oh
sometimes
my god.
it's challenging in that way, and then sometimes it's just helping writers, you know, I guess be professional or just really helping them understand the parameters of the business and what's appropriate protocol. One writer once started to call me General Haynes.
Really?
This is what, yeah, and I'm like, me? But I was sometimes like, okay, no, this is not, you cannot do
Wait,
this.
I mean, your voice does. I mean, if you wanted to cosplay as like Denzel from the Titans
That's not my
movie, you could
personality.
do
It's
that.
not my personality at all. I saw myself in an interview recently that I think went well. I just was, I told Krishan, I was like, oh, but I just looked a little serious. She was like, no, you look professional. I was like, it was just weird for me to, I see myself much more as like, and it's weird for me to see myself like, well,
We all care. We contain multitudes.
we
We can
do.
be it
We
all.
do.
I mean, you are in this new era. I mean, you are. I know you and Sibo did a talk. Where was it? Was that the James Baldwin
At the
bookstore?
Schomburg.
Oh, the Strong. Okay, no big deal. How has that been for you? Do you think, and career wise, does anything change now that you have a published novel? You still editing around the clock?
I am editing around the clock. So today, Mandy, I have to get some very late pages to one of my authors, a mystery thriller author. I've done a lot of editing work with. I'm very late, and then I literally will probably spend all the rest of the day just returning emails and texts. Just because what the challenge has been, I've been having a wonderful publishing experience, and that I have the full support of my publisher and my imprint and the house. And so where a lot of the work has come in is just the outside world, because it's a book that's centering a black woman, a glamorous, powerful black woman, and it's speculative fiction. There's a lot of like, what is this? The orders weren't as big as if I was, doing sort of more Eurocentric work. And so the work now has just been just really getting the word out there. And so making lots and lots of tour stops, doing lots of events, doing lots of discussions, and I adore it and I'm loving it. And then the big change, to answer your question, has been how to balance all of this with then my other work. So that's been the big.
It's a good problem to have.
It is, and I'm not
Yeah.
complaining. I think
No, you can complain. It's a problem, but it's also like, it's as someone who is preparing mentally for the book launch, that for the book that I need to finish, it'll happen. I want to have this problem, but I also,
oh,
I
you are.
we have to anticipate that, because it's like, it's like you said, you look at the book cover, there's no hiding who this book is about, I thought I mean, the cover art beautiful, by the way. I
They
love
did
it.
a wonderful. That is all Krishan and designer Dana Lee and artist extraordinaire Natasha Cunningham. I had very little. I just gave the idea and like a general idea, and then they just took it. And I said, I'm going to get out of the way, y'all, because like
It's
again,
hot, hot,
Krishan is
hot.
like the target reader. I was like, you need to do what you think looks.
It inspired a whole altar. Well, I wish we
Yeah.
had more time. I want to keep talking to you. Well, now we're friends, so duh. Trapped you. You're my friend now. I'm gonna have to come visit you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, but you're gonna have the same things are gonna come up. What I would say is it's good. I think now I kind of know, like, okay, there just takes a certain level of intention in terms of, and I think you're better. I know you're better at this than I am in terms of like how to configure your day, how to schedule things, how to sort of have everything be in their place. I wasn't quite as prepared as I should have been, and so I'm getting a lot better with figuring all of that out. So
I mean, you got to learn as you go. And by the time how many more novels do you think is this going to be? I know it's giving series, but how many do you think?
I can't say.
Come on now. I don't want to give it
Like,
away, but you know.
I just
Come on, I love a little twisty twist
wheels
at
of
the
Ghost
end. Come on.
dot.
Okay, fine. Clarence Haynes, thank you so much for joining Brown
Thank you.
Ambition.
This
BA
was
fam, go pick up your copies. Publishers won't be publishing these books if we don't go buy them, but not just out of a sense of, I have to do this or I should do this. Do it out of a sense of this is a damn good book. And it's a very it's a page turner. It is a finish in a weekend and then talk about it for the next 2 months of your life kind of book. Congratulations, Clarence. Thank you so much for sharing with Brown Ambition.
Thank you so much for having me, Mandy. This was an absolute delight. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. And now where can BA fam find you on the internet streets?
I am on I am on Instagram at Clarence A. Haynes. So just my name without any period spaces. I'm particularly very responsive on Insta, but then I'm also on Threads and Facebook and Blue Sky. But yeah, just look for me and if and I do respond to messages. It just sometimes will take me a couple of days because of my schedule. But send me
He's
a shout.
busy. But do send him a shout. We need all the support. And leave reviews. Don't even DM. If you're going to DM him, stop it. Go to Amazon and leave a review. Go to Goodreads and leave a review. We need it. All right. Thank you, Clarence. Congratulations on the book and good luck on many, many more months of promoting it to come. And BA fam, until next time, take
Thank
care.
you, Mandy. Peace, y'all.
Bye.